Hi, I decided to film this so Jess can see how I went through the process of shearing fabric. First off, I have a Brother sewing machine. See? Each sewing machine is different, and based off of your sewing machine brand and each individual sewing machine, your settings may be a little different from machine to machine. When you're shearing fabric, make sure you go up here to the tension, and it's gonna vary. Some tutorials I saw say change it all the way up here to a 9 or whatever the setting your machine is. 9 is my highest. But for me, I found out it works best at a 6. And what I would suggest to you is to play around with your settings a little bit with your tension and do it on some scrap fabric and figure out what works best for you. For the stitch length, it's recommended that you change it all the way up to the highest stitch length setting as you can, and in the case of my machine, it's a 5. Also, the last thing, when you're threading the machine, you're going to use elastic thread for this. And there it is in there. When you get the elastic thread, make sure you hand wind it into the bobbin. You cannot use the upper bobbin threading thing on top of your machine because it will pull the elastic too tight. Therefore, it will not feed properly through and it won't get the proper effect when you're trying to shear the fabric. So make sure you always hand wind it. And when you're hand winding it, again, do it gently. Don't pull it too tight. Don't pull it too loosely. Just make sure it's really natural, like the way you see it on the spool, the way you bought it. That's the way you're going to put it on the bobbin, okay? And one little pro tip here. If you have a Brother sewing machine, which I do, down here in your bobbin case, I can't get it all the way in there, but in the bobbin case, where your threads fed through, you're going to have a little problem in that. And there's a reason why this machine is all the way open right now. You're going to have to take the case out, put the bobbin in, and wind it in the thread in the groove in there like you normally would do. You just run it through the machine normally. With the elastic thread, it won't sit in there properly. So you're going to take it out and put it in there and fiddle with it to get it to wind through properly. Also, another thing, if you take this all the way out, I can't zoom in that high, but right in here somewhere there's two screws. One's silver, and on the left hand side it's going to be green. And that's the little green one there. It's kind of really hard to see, but those two screws also bother with the tension as well. It's the left hand one you're going to be messing with, and you may want to tighten that up a little bit more, and that will help it thread through better also. But in the case of mine, I found out that I didn't have to bother with that screw, so as long as I hand guided it in here, it was okay. And all I did is but yeah, after that, just go ahead, put your bobbin in, thread your machine like normal, and you can go ahead and sew. In the case of this machine, it's awesome because I have no screws at all to worry about. Just slides and put into place. The upside of a Brother over a Singer. So let me go ahead and put this over here so I can get this back in place. If it will go in there, it's being a pain in the butt today. There. Go ahead and put the top back on. And again, the bottom is threaded with the elastic thread. The upper thread here, it's regular old cotton thread or whatever it is that matches your project. In this case, for this project, well, the sample, I'm doing it with hot pink because I am going to go ahead and use this later on my real one. So I have a little ribbon fabric here to work with. And what I have is a fabric piece that's about 13 inches long. I went ahead and drew a line on it to guide me with, so I can have a starter line to follow. And what I'm going to do is stitch in a straight line stitch and follow that line on the edge of my presser foot and use it going all the way down the line, and I'm just going to keep repeating the process. So let me go ahead and lower the presser foot. I'm going to go ahead and back stitch first. And one little small tip, when you're back stitching it and locking a thread in place, I would recommend that you lower the stitch length to about a 1.5, depending on your machine and how it works. I'm going to change mine to 1.6. Okay, let me get it into place and get this guy out of the way. There. And let me go ahead and stitch that down about 3 or 4 stitches. And go ahead and back stitch it. There. And then let me go ahead and change it up to the highest length setting and go ahead and start stitching it. And again, all I'm doing is just following the line that I placed in tailor's chalk on the fabric at the edge of my presser foot. And magically it will start gathering up the fabric as it stitches. And the first stitching line, it's going to be pretty easy because you're just following the line. The next one may be a little bit more difficult because you're going to have that gathered fabric there and you're going to have to try and smooth it out as you stitch. And now that I'm at the end of the row, I'm going to go ahead and change my length down to 1.6 again so I can go ahead and back stitch the thread down and lock it into place. There. There. Go ahead and remove this. And here's a cheat thing. Instead of cutting the thread, all I'm going to do is just pull it up a little bit, turn the fabric around, line up the edge of the presser foot with that line of stitching I just did. And there it is. And go ahead and back stitch it into place. And then change it back out to a 5 for me, which is my highest setting. And then go ahead and follow this line of stitching that I did before. And doing this helps you keep your rows evenly spaced apart, so you don't have to draw a line for every line of stitching that you do. You can just do that guideline for that first one, or if you just have, you can just follow the edge of your fabric, whatever you want to do. But you need something to use as a guide for your first row, and then after that, just use your foot and right along the ends. And back stitch. And let me do one more row for you, so you can get a really good idea of what it's going to look like. See how I did? Just pivot the fabric around. Line up the edge of the presser foot with the row of stitching. Lock my thread down again. And back stitch it. And go ahead and start stitching again. And it magically gathers it up to create that wonderful ruched looking sheared effect. Cut this. And upper thread, cut that too. I guess I'll cut the guides on the ends. Let's move the machine out of the way for a little bit. And now, see, this is what I had, this little piece of fabric I started out with. And as you can see, the rows of stitching, 1, 2, 3, and there's my guideline that I used to help me follow along with in the beginning. And as you can see, the elastic is great. it works wonderfully. It does stretch quite nicely. But I got one more little tip for you to make it even sheer a little bit more. Let's get the dandy pressing mat out. Very well worn and well used. I might like that. It's suggested that you don't have to do this, but it helps it even give it a bit more shearing, and it kind of scrunches up the fabric a bit more. That use iron. Here's the iron. And what you're going to do is either mist it with water. I've seen some people use starch. It just depends on what you want to do, but basically you need moisture on the fabric. Or not if you don't want to use it. But you're going to go ahead and lay your fabric down and put on your iron. And I used it as a steam setting earlier when I tried it, and it worked out great. Personally, if I had a delicate fabric and I had the water to mist it down on, I would get a pressing cloth, use that, moisten that up a bit with the water, and then put the pressing cloth on top of your fabric, and then go ahead and get the iron on top of it so you don't have to worry about ruining your delicate fabrics, which I have a project that I'm going to end up doing that for soon. And all I'm going to do is just press the iron down and press it down again, and basically all it does, it's going to shrink it up a bit more. But again, the water is optional, depending on what you want to do and what your personal preference is. I really don't care for it right now because I don't need it. This is just a little tutorial piece here. And that's pretty much it. And look, it kind of shrank it down a little bit more. Originally, when I cut this, I had said that the fabric was about 13 inches, 12 and a half, 13 inches altogether. This thing is wonderful because it has all the little numbers on here, this pressing mat. It's great. I'm supposed to use it for quilting. As you can see, it shrank down quite a bit. Well, let me move it to the end here so you can get a better idea of how far it shrank down a bit. There to the one. It's about 12 and a half, 13 in the beginning, and it is now right around that 8-inch mark. So there's some significant shrinkage. And what I would suggest to you, if you do this for a project for something that's larger, use about 1/3 more extra fabric. It depends, because if you go by a pattern, I would say follow the pattern instructions and do it that way. But if you're doing something from scratch of your own creation, I would say use up to 1/2 to double the amount of fabric so you can accommodate for the shrinkage that's going to happen when you shear the fabric out. And that's pretty much it. And I hope this helps someone out. And y'all don't call me or text me constantly saying, Cass, hey, come help me. I need you, please. And doing that whole Obi-Wan thing like Princess Leia did. No. I got my own sewing to do right now. That's it. That's all for now. Enjoy.